today. So without further ado, I will hand to Laura to start this webinar. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Sophie. So I'm Dr. Laura Fogg-Rogers at UE Bristol. My colleague Sophie Lagan there. We're both in the Science Communication Unit at UE Bristol, part of the ClairCity Research Project. And on our webinar today, we've been bringing together a group of people across Bristol who all have various expertise on engaging citizens with air pollution and carbon emission issues. So we'll be hearing from Alan Morris from Bristol Walking Alliance, from Sam Morris, no relation, from Our Air, Our City, the XR Bristol campaign, Zoe Banks-Gross from Norwest Media Centre, and a variety of other community projects as well. Samuel Williams from Bristol Schools Climate Alliance, and then on to our reflection section where we'll be hearing from Mark Leach from Bristol City Council and Professor Jim Longhurst from the Bristol Green Capital Partnership. So we'll be going through that today in an order where you'll hear first of all from myself and Sophie. We're going to explain the ClairCity project, what we did in our 4-year EU Horizon 2020 project. Then we'll have a break for questions where you can ask us about our work. And then we move into our community reflections as well. So this is other campaigns some of which we worked with on the ClairCity project, some of which we haven't and have been established since, learning about how they have engaged with citizens from across a diverse, broad spectrum of people within mainly Bristol for this webinar, but ClairCity as a whole was across Europe. And finally, as I say, we'll come into the reflections about what we've heard and then a chance for you to ask questions. So as Sophie says, if you want to ask questions, you can ask them at any point during the webinar by the chat function. So you click in there, type your question, and we will bring them together in the 2 question sections. So firstly, I'm going to just introduce what the ClairCity research project was and what we did to engage citizens in air pollution and carbon reduction. So firstly, we're assuming that people who've come to this webinar already know about air pollution, but just to reiterate, it's the cause of 1 in 8 premature deaths worldwide, disproportionately harms children and the elderly, causing respiratory diseases, cancer, and exacerbating heart conditions. And it also disproportionately affects those from vulnerable communities as well, so people from Black, Asian, minority ethnic groups or in lower socioeconomic status, because they tend to live in more air polluted affected areas. And those same activities that are causing air pollution are also the ones producing carbon emissions, which, as we know, is the major cause of climate change. So to describe our project, we ran across 6 cities in Europe, which were Amsterdam in the Netherlands, the Aveiro region in Portugal, Bristol in the UK, Ljubljana in Slovenia, the Liguria region in Italy, and Sosnowiec in Poland. So the idea of our project was to change the way that we think about air pollution, how it's produced, and who by. So normally most air pollution takes a technological approach to air quality and health. So it might look at what vehicles or industries actually produce the pollution, where this happens in the city, what times of day, and who is affected. However, ClairCity took a new approach by joining with the social sciences. We wanted to look more deeply at who is causing the problems and what are our reasons for using polluting technologies and industries. And so the kind of results that we've produced is this sort of slide here. This was a big slide, a big surprise for us. We examined why people are travelling in cars, where they're going and when. Because against all perceived wisdom that it's commute that causes the main issues for air pollution, we were looking at an annual mean, so not the peak concentrations that you might still see at rush hours, but across the entire year of all the emissions produced, what are the reasons that they're caused? And you'll see from the graph there that leisure travel actually produces the most nitrogen dioxides. So it gives us a new way in to think about talking to people about the reasons that we are polluting our air. So overall, our aim was to create a major shift in the public understanding towards the causes of poor air quality. We invited citizens to give their opinions on air pollution and carbon reduction to shape our cities of the future. we aim to put citizens' behaviour and activities at the heart of policy making, with the graphs that just showed you examples of modelling like that. We wanted to develop new ways of modelling and showing this so that people can relate to the activities that are causing pollution. And we wanted to raise awareness of these environmental challenges and their solutions. So to help with that, we've created a raft of infographics and resources which you can find on our website. So please, we want people to use and share these. Please do go on there and use them in your projects if useful to you. So the process as a whole, firstly, what we did was we benchmarked and modelled behaviour to find out where we're currently at, to get an accurate situation of each city. Now, we did that in the ClairCity project in 2016. And we also went out and engaged with citizens as well, as I say, to find out those personal reasons, qualitative data about why people and where people are going when they're using polluting forms of transport. And in other countries, the major causes of air pollution are actually home heating, so thinking about that as well. The citizens' ideas for their city were then compiled into a unified policy scenario, so looking at what they thought about what's happening now, what they'd like to see in the future, and then they were brought together into policy packages. So the ideas included things like banning polluting vehicles, more cycling, better cycling and walking routes, and support for poorer citizens to move over to different technologies. All these ideas were checked with city experts in our policy and stakeholder workshops, and then they were remodelled with our quantification team to find out the impact assessments of what any changes in these scenarios would do to emissions. So you can see here that in our policy reports and in our data that we've produced things like this, so different ways of viewing and seeing where pollution comes from and who by. And then also with the citizens' ideas for how we might reduce that pollution. We've also, you can see the graph on the right there is reducing for both nitrogen dioxide and PM10 particulate matter. So that's as the citizens' ideas are brought in, we reduce the air pollution in our cities, which makes it a safer, healthier place for people to live in. And you can find all this information that we produced for each of our 6 cities in our policy packages, which are on the website. So a raft of ideas that are relevant to the cities and the citizens that were involved across Europe. So today we're thinking about what can we learn from ClairCity to think about how we can further engage citizens in these topics, air pollution and carbon emissions. So I'm just going to describe the engagement tools that we used to reach people. So our engagement tools, we aim to actually go out and engage with a broad variety of citizens from young to old. And we were aiming to both generally raise awareness of these issues and actually involve citizens to get their ideas and put them directly into our policy packages. So for public awareness, we ran city events and festivals, we had an app, we organised schools lessons and activities, and we made videos involving older people. And Sophie's going to talk later about what we can learn from those activities as well. And then in terms of involvement to co-create our future scenarios, we used a Delphi method, which is basically surveys and workshops, so traditional ways of consulting and engaging with people to funnel that down and develop our scenarios. We also had a mutual workshop, and we developed a new Skylines game, which is a mobile game that can be used for decision making. And you'll see from our results that we over-exceeded our aims to reach at least 50,000 citizens and to raise awareness of these issues. Social media and our website prove the best ways to reach many people. However, our engagement methods also allowed us to target people who might not necessarily engage in those more traditional ways or in digital methods of communication. So you can see that we reached nearly 5,000 citizens directly as well. And across all our engagement tools, you can see on this graph here that the most successful methods for reaching a wide variety of people were the Delphi which is that traditional methods of surveys and workshops. We made sure we went to different areas of the city as well to make sure we involve more people. And also our game, which is a digital online tool for decision making. And that's reached a wide variety of people as well, mainly younger people, which is different to who you might normally find in a consultation. We have a full evaluation report with all this data online, but just looking here, you can see that we actually reached 63% men, and that's because of those stakeholder and policy workshops tended to involve senior men in institutions, and also the game did tend to attract more male gamers. However, when we're thinking about those surveys and workshops, they were evenly attended by male and females as well. We reached a higher proportion than usual of younger participants, which is through those schools activities and the game as well. And then our evaluation found what we found really interesting, that the more people enjoyed the activity, the more they said their understanding had gone up, and the more then that they said they were willing to intend to change their behaviour. So something for us all to think about there, about making sure participants enjoy what we're taking part in. And so now I'm going to hand over to Sophie, who'll talk us through kind of the lessons that we've learned that we'd like to hand on to you. And as I say, after Sophie's talks, we have a break then for questions. So thank you.
Thanks, Laura. So as Laura mentioned at the start, I also work in the Science Communication Unit at UE. And for the past 3 years, I've been working on coordinating and helping to evaluate health and sustainability research projects at UE, and ones that specifically are looking at involving citizens in city decision-making processes. So in this presentation, I'll share with you my experience of working on these projects, sharing our resources and some top tips for making our engagements inclusive and for feeding back citizens' preferences to influence decision-making. Most of what I'll be discussing today can be found in our Community Activator pack, shamelessly plugging, which has got a link below here for you to follow up. We really encourage everybody to download and share this pack, as it's designed to help with your campaigning. Whether you're a new or long-term activist, the pack will guide you to the most relevant section. So there's lots of information for new and old people here. And the reason why I imagine most of us are here concerns how we get from these kind of scenarios that more seem to be in red towards this one in the top right hand corner, where citizens are included in decision making and air quality and climate change policies are ambitious. Many of us are probably working towards this goal, but it's also worth reflecting on whether we're able to include those voices that are most impacted by development. People of low socioeconomic status, BAME communities, older people, children. How do we make sure that our engagements are capturing all of these voices? So in our pack, the first section walks you through how to set up a campaign group. While this might be obvious for some, there are a few things worth reflecting on. So first of all, we talk about, are our groups inclusive? Are they representative? Can everybody speak up? If you answer no to these questions, then there's opportunities to reconfigure group dynamics or to make the group more diverse by reaching out to different communities and making them part of the process. And then there's deciding on roles. So here is everybody doing the work that they love. There's a fun quiz that you can do on the story of stuff to find out which kind of change maker you are. And out of interest, we're actually posing this question to you today, also to keep everybody moving a little bit. So I'm just going to go into the chat box and post a link. So if you can click on this link, you're going to have about a minute to answer, and we want you to answer which kind of change maker you think you are. We know we don't fit ideally into these categories, neatly into them, but we just want to kind of get a feel of what people are representing or how they see themselves today. So the options are resistor, so you'll find them on the front line, often at protests. Networkers, they work behind the scenes connecting up ideas and people. Nurturers, these individuals support the group in a caring capacity. Investigators, they seek out the facts. Communicators, They are able to articulate the group's message verbally or through writing. And then finally, builders. Oh, I've got people saying that they don't see options to vote. Okay, if people can't see that, no worries. What I will do is I will post that link in the Q&A so we can do it during the Q&A session. Okay, thank you for slotting. And yeah, we'll reveal the answers later once we get up and working. And yes, so here your aim is to get to know the people involved in your campaign, develop relationships, actively listen to what they care about and how they like to get involved, so that you can assign tasks to them that they're interested in and give them energy to sustain the campaign cycle. Third on our list is creating a plan of action. This is a great business model canvas tool that you can use. There's loads of different varieties online, but I've just linked to one here. And it starts in the middle here with your value proposition. So actually understanding the why of why you're doing your campaign. And it also includes everything from your value proposition to how do you make money to cover your resources and time costs. So even if you consider your campaign to be small, this is effective for thinking through issues and ensuring everyone is on the same page. And then last but not least, there's a stakeholder analysis step, which allows you to figure out who needs to be included and in what way. There is lots more information about this as well online, if you would like to find out more. And once you've set up your campaign, you'll want to gather the evidence to support your mission. And in the age of misinformation, it's critical we ensure the science we use is reliable and robust. We have gathered evidence in our project from existing research as well as our own and created a whole bunch of graphics for you to download and share, for example. Clean Air for Bristol as well is a great website. They've got an engagement toolkit there as well, which you can make use of. We also have tweetable facts like these that you can download from our website, relevant to Bristol and to other cities across Europe, as well as citizen-led clean air action plans. And we've got one for each of our partner cities and available in local languages as well. We also have more generic infographics that can be used with younger audiences or used in workshops, for example. These are specific to air pollution. Well, this one is specific to climate change. All these graphics were produced by a local graphic design agency called Point Creative, and we worked with them throughout the 4 years to develop these really lovely, engaging pieces of work. So now you've set up a campaign group that has got good representation and it's been reflective about how it's going to go about its campaigning. Now, and you have all the evidence you need as well, your next step is to engage your citizens and stakeholders. This is a page taken from our Community Activator Pack. I actually first came across this continuum on the resources page of the Tamarack Institute, which I've also linked for you. And they're a charity based in Canada that looks to understand community change. So I can highly recommend them. And what this continuum shows is the various approaches to community engagement, from more passive, informing citizens about your initiative and inviting their input, all the way to collaborating and partnering with the community from the beginning to tackle issues. So it says here, you care about this issue and are leading initiative. How can we support you? So none of these approaches are better or worse than one another. They're just different. So some people may just want a leaflet. Others may want something deeper. In the ClairCity project, we try to use the full spectrum of these approaches to appeal to a diverse audience and diverse interests. And this is also taken from the Tamarack Institute. If you follow the link, you can find the full toolkit here, which explains exactly what all of these tools are. So I won't go into detail. But myself and Laura have experience in using quite a few of these, if you'd like to know more. Bristol City Council even actually use asset-based community development in their approach working with communities. And it's a really interesting one, which really goes to communities, asks them about their gifts and what what they have to offer and how you can support them to create change locally. And it's a tried and tested method. In our activator pack, we've included a number of guides with regards to using some of these tools. For example, there are ones on how to run events, set up a social media platform, or develop workshops. In our first webinar, we actually explained all of our methods in more detail, so do check out our YouTube if you're interested to learn more. Alternatively, head to our reports page where you can read our evaluation report, which I've shown you here. And it contains information about what worked from our tools, as well as tips on how to improve them for next time, so you can learn from our experiences. We've also created an educator pack for anyone who wishes to involve younger audiences. All our resources are available on sustainable learning as well, a really great platform for anybody who wants to share their school's resources. And if you follow that link, you'll be able to get our high resolution educator pack there, as well as various other resources. And I will share all of these links at the end, because I know I'm sharing quite a few of them. And the pack has over a dozen lesson plans and activities that you can run in schools, online, or at public events. You can then print and download postcards for children to fill in and send to their MPs. We even have a clean air top trumps for children to explore trade-offs when taking decisions about improvements to the city. And it's very similar to our actual game, ClairCity Skylines, but that was a digital version. And one of the lessons in the pack is a traffic survey, which allows children to become a data scientist and take a closer look at the extent of the problem in their area. This could even be done remotely, with children counting traffic from their living room window, for example, making our resources adaptable to COVID times. And in the next few weeks, we're just finalising this now, we're going to have this pack ready for use in schools across Bristol, and it's actually going to be a STEAM eco pack, so for science, technology, engineering, arts and maths, so it covers all subjects pretty much, and it's a 6-week challenge for kids to take part in the classroom or outside of the classroom, combining a lot of our resources with an award ceremony at the end and a week of action as well. So we'll share that with you in a follow-up email as soon as that goes live, and check out our social media where we'll share it on there too. So I'm going to end my presentation with some tips for making our engagements inclusive. And to do so, I'm going to use an example from a previous project I worked on called Shape Our City, which used asset-based community development. So tip number 1 is to find common ground. So go to where people are, don't expect them to come to you. In this example, we went to a care home to ask them what mattered to them and what they'd like happen to improve about their area. And if you're interested, we also have a guide on how to engage older people in our activator pack. Tip 2 was around building support. So having identified the community issues, we worked with architecture students at UWE to carry out the local action, which in this case was to improve the gardens so the residents would enjoy them more. We also shared a lot of food during the project, and it brought a lot more people to the table who might not have otherwise been there. And we partnered with a local organisation called Growing Support to make all of this happen. And after the community actions, so this is talking about embracing long-termism, tip number 3. So after those actions, having gathered thousands of preferences from across communities in the city, not just this community space, about how to improve the built environment for improved health outcomes, we shared our findings with key decision makers to influence their decision making. And we stayed connected with the communities we worked with during the whole 18 months of the project, and also kept in touch afterwards. So during our engagements with the care home, for example, the residents told us that the pavement from the care home to the shops was a health hazard. So we worked with the council until they completed the necessary work to drop the curb. And tip number 4, make engagements fun. So across both of these projects, we created banners, built planters, ran experiments, played games, and even shared seeds. These are serious issues, but our engagements don't need to be. And that is where I think I will end it. If you want to know more about these projects or our processes, then do get in touch or ask me questions in the chat box. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Sophie. So this is our question break, and we can try to get that Menti poll in there as well, but it may not work. Hopefully you get a feel for what sort of engager you are anyway. So please do type questions into our chat box. I'm going to start taking some of the ones that are already in there, but if you have any questions specifically for ClairCity at the moment, please do ask them. As I say, we have a second question break later on in the webinar at the end, where we bring everything together and you can ask questions to the various community groups. So firstly, just to note, as Sophie ended, making things fun. So that came up in our questions, that the kids' resources are bright, enjoyable, engaging, and also if we want to kind of engage with diverse, broad spectrum of communities, then we need to make it enjoyable rather than making people feel guilty or it's kind of their problem. So definitely something to learn. The other question that came in that we can see was about the modelling that we did. So the graph that I showed only showed PM10 and NOx. However, that was just a one-slide synopsis of very, very thick policy reports. So we did model PM2.5, PM10, NOx and carbon emissions. So we've got both the baseline assessments from 2016 for all our 6 cities, and we've modelled what the various citizen suggestions will do over the next decade and up to 2050 as well, to show how they will drop. So if you're interested in that, please do look on there. And I also saw in the chat box that there's live monitoring as well, which you can look at from Bristol City Council on the open data. So if you're interested in current levels, then please do check there. That is in our chat box. Another question was about were the local authorities involved as stakeholders within ClairCity? Yes, they were. So all 6 of our cities also involved the city councils, both to help us work, engage citizens, so find citizens to talk to, but also to help us link to stakeholders and experts as well. And finally, that ratification step, so to take that policy report back to the council and show them what we found over the 4 years of the project. Within Bristol City Council, we went to the Climate Change Committee, so they're very much thinking even faster than when our project started, so now thinking about net zero 2030. So that was interesting as well. So I'm just reading another question here. So I seem to remember that the most successful campaign was one that did not mention air quality, but concentrated on the necessary behavioural changes. So thinking about behaviour change. So yes, that's one of the reasons that we have tried to find different ways of presenting our data about behaviour. So we're thinking about how it relates to people, how we can see people in the data. And that's why we've tried to change it just from a diesel car, a petrol car, a diesel bus, and so on, so technological means, and relate them to how we live our lives. So going shopping, going out to leisure activities, going to work, commuting, dropping kids off at school, things that we all recognise in our behaviour and that we can talk to and relate with. I believe there's a project in Bristol as well that also talks about this. I don't know that, so if anyone else does know, then please post it in our chat box. And how do we engage with people from ethnic minority groups is another question. So we took the approach of distributed and also central dialogues as well. So we worked with the traditional partners like the City Council to hold events in places like City Hall or in known places, and then fully recognised that not everyone is going to attend that, will not feel comfortable there. So we went out to different locations across the city, trying to think about a diverse spread of people, both from ethnic minorities and also from low socioeconomic status areas as well. So we held traditional workshops in those areas, But we also went to more fun things as well, so community festivals, Southmead Festival, Eastern, we worked in Up Our Street and so on as well. And one of our main consultation methods was a survey. Now, we recognise not everyone is going to do an online survey on an issue which may not feel relevant to that. And so that's why we turned our online survey into a physical questionnaire with a person going and speaking to people and asking to people. And so that worked well for us to really increase our representation in the project. In Bristol, we achieved representation within that stage of the project. We didn't achieve representation with some of our other methods, such as videos or schools work and so on. So that's something to consider, and that's what we're going to hear about from our next speakers soon. So I'm just looking at our questions to round up there. So the poll should work now if anyone would like to find out more about how you recognise or see our spread of people across the webinar here. And also the behaviour presentation, turns out it was us. It was my colleague, Professor Enda Hayes, who did that presentation about exactly this topic, about being able to see people in the data. Okay, so I think that's all the questions we have for this period. But if anyone, we have another section of questions, as I say, at the end of the project, so do keep asking them. And at this point, we're going to move over now to hear from other community groups across Bristol and what have they learned about how to engage people, how to reach people from diverse sectors of society. So first up, we have Alan Morris from the Bristol Clean Air Alliance and Bristol Walking Alliance as well, who's going to talk us through his experiences and learning about how that works.
Hi, yes, I'm Alan Morris, and I'm speaking today on behalf of Bristol Clean Air Alliance. So the Alliance was formed in April 2018. This is very much in the context of action on NOx pollution from transport. We are a small group from different campaigning backgrounds. And my other involvements are Bristol Walking Alliance, Bristol Civic Society, and the Sustainable Transport Network of the Green Capital Partnership. So I'm well used to campaigning on those sort of themes. I with some others, started the Clean Air Alliance. I started purely as a citizen concerned about air pollution, and I joined others to campaign on it. So the context, as I say, is very much to do with the action on NOx and transport, or has been so far, rather than particulate pollution. It's been in the context of a framework of the European Union passing limits for acceptable air pollution, and then when countries did not meet those targets, the UK government was forced to take action and then forced to take the councils to take action. And so this is very much about compliance with those limits. And the scheme, the eventual scheme, the Clean Air Zone scheme, will be determined by the modelling. And in the context of Bristol itself, politically, the mayor took control of it from the cabinet lead person. And the Clean Air Alliance came together in the early days of this process. So our approach has been as follows. First of all, it's a technical subject, so we needed to do quite a lot of research ourselves and improve our understanding. Some of that was web research, but we also spoke to council officers, including Mark, who we'll hear from later. And we're even able to have a conversation with the consultants commissioned by the council. Secondly, in order to do this, we had to build relationships, to build confidence in us that we were good people to work with, and that's with the different people that we wanted to talk to. both teams within the council and the political leaders. Our approach was largely to react to council proposals, and in doing so think about our own comments on those from different points of view, whether the proposals look to be effective, whether they look to be practical, and can consider the political slant that was being put on them as well. And then we'd debate the response between us to ensure it was a joint view and to improve our response as a result. And we would tend to make use of council committee meetings to make statements or ask questions and to nudge the council. We found this was a good way of accessing the council because it wasn't always easy to get access directly to the politicians. We also kept in contact with our members. We kept the network live, so we were truly acting as an alliance. We sent out e-bulletins, we had a Facebook page, and in what we did, the Friends of the Earth were a particular ally because they were doing a national campaign at the time. And we also kept in contact with Client Earth, which is the national organisation which has been taking out court actions against the government to make sure they did the right thing. And we also did a certain amount of work to facilitate groups within the Alliance. So, for instance, to help them take action on Clean Air Day, which takes place in June each year. And we also helped start up a school streets group, which was campaigning for car restrictions outside school, pick up and drop off. So working together, we were a small group with limited capacity, but with the benefit of a larger mailing list. We found we did have the right blend of skills and interests. So referring back to the slide we saw just now on the different roles, more by luck than judgment, I think we found we did have a mix of those roles. So, for instance, myself, I'm probably in the investigator camp. We did come with very different campaigning approaches, and it's interesting when you do work together in a campaign group. Sometimes your differences complement each other, sometimes they clash. But that's all part of working together, and it's okay as long as you can manage those differences respectfully. We came up against some organisational questions, so we set ourselves up as an alliance, both of groups and individuals, but quite what did that mean? We ended up staying quite a loose organisation. We didn't, we were an unconstituted body. We had to ask ourselves, what does membership actually mean? Can we make statements on behalf of the Alliance? Are we campaigning, just coordinating? Do we need a strong, visible public identity? And we worked out answers to those questions as we went along. So in summary, we have been a loosely defined organisation. We haven't done much direct campaigning, but we're complementing other groups that have been doing direct campaigning. Primarily, we've been council facing. We've been working within what you might call the system, trying to achieve the art of the possible. We've been facilitating other groups, and we've been working together through individual differences. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan, there. And it's really nice to see that those reflections that we shared from ClairCity are also coming through in the learnings there from Bristol Clean Air Alliance. So we're going to move on now to hear from our next speakers. And as I say, we'll compile all our responses at the end. So up next, we have Sam Morris, who's the coordinator of the Bristol XR Political Circle, and also XR known as Extinction Rebellion Bristol, with the Our Air, Our City campaign. So Sam, are you there?
I am. Hope you can hear me and see me. Yeah, my name's Sam. I'm coordinator of XR Bristol Political Circle, and yeah, I thought I'd just give you a quick overview of who XR is and what we do, what we're campaigning for. Then talk about the issues of air quality in Bristol, and our Clean Air for Life Actions Week, and then move on to our Air Our City campaign. So. XR is an international movement that uses non-violent civil disobedience in an attempt to halt mass extinction and minimise the risk of social collapse. We're politically non-partisan and use activism to persuade local and national governments to act justly on the climate and ecological emergency. We organise in small autonomous groups distributed around the world and are working to build a movement that is participatory, decentralised and inclusive. What we're pushing for are three demands. Firstly, that governments tell the truth by declaring climate and ecological emergency. Second, that governments must act now to halt biodiversity loss and reduce greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2025. And third, the government must create and be led by decisions of citizens' assemblies on climate and ecological justice. So we're pushing for change because we are facing an unprecedented global emergency. And we believe that the time for denial is over, that we need to act now. XR activism has helped move things forward, and we don't always get it right. Certain tactics and actions have come in for criticism, but XR's strategy of non-violent civil disobedience has pushed the climate and ecological emergency to the top of the agenda, both politically and socially. We built on years of hard-fought campaign work undertaken by other groups, and building on this, XR has helped to ensure that across the world are now far more knowledgeable of humans' connection and responsibility for the climate crisis. As a result of that, there's a mounting public pressure on politicians and decision makers to deliver the changes that are so desperately needed. Communication is really important in XR, and we use multiple platforms to get our message across, including web, email, social media, traditional press, word of mouth. Our national and international campaigns use pretty consistent language, but with some local campaigns and actions, XR groups tailor their language or approach to suit certain audiences or to draw in a wider group. Because the organisation and demographic groups have different concerns, XR has a network of connected communities such as XR doctors, XR youth, XR Muslim, XR families, XR farmers. These networks allow different groups to engage and connect with activists from a similar background, and keeps all of them engaged within the movement as a whole. So why are XR campaigning about Bristol's air quality? Well, before lockdown, Bristol's air pollution was over twice the legal limit, far exceeding the World Health Organisation's safe levels in certain areas of the city, not all across. And even now, we're just beginning to emerge from lockdown, and air pollution in Bristol has already crept back above the threshold. Long-term exposure to air pollution causes around 5 premature deaths in Bristol each week. Toxic air contributes to several health conditions, including asthma, lung cancer, heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. Not only this, but exposure to air pollution increases our chance of being more severely affected by COVID-19. And it's disadvantaged communities that suffer the greatest consequence of air pollution whilst contributing the least to it. In a recent study, Lawrence Hill stood out as an area having the highest black and minority ethnic population in the city, some of the highest levels of deprivation, the lowest levels of car ownership, and suffering some of the worst air pollution in Bristol. So Clean Air for Life, this was an Actions Week that XR Bristol ran, which started on the 22nd of June. It was a beautiful, informative and safely interactive week of actions to demand clean air for life. At the start of the week, we nailed a letter to the door of City Hall and demanded that the council and WECA work together to deliver clean air to Bristol by April 2021. College Green was the focal point for our actions, and during the week we arranged colourful cubes on the green, open air speeches and presentations. We laid out 296 shoes on the green to represent the number of deaths each year that are attributable to air pollution in Bristol. And we also poured lungs full of soot onto WECA's doorstep in an effort to highlight the implications of their proposed 1980s road building scheme. The aim of the week of actions was to highlight Bristol's air quality issues and how they affect people. Throughout the week, we engaged with people using social media, and respecting social distancing rules, we spoke to them on the streets. We encouraged citizens to write to the mayor and to councillors expressing their concern and their hope that urgent action will be taken to tackle air pollution in the city. We also asked people to record videos explaining their personal struggles and fears over illegal air. These videos were edited onto a montage which was projected onto City Hall one evening. We hope that by engaging citizens, we could show them that collectively it's possible to bring about change. Oh, can you hear me? Sorry, I think I've got a bit of a bad connection for some reason.
Yes, I can still hear you, Sam. We're going fine.
Okay.
Oh, are you okay carrying on, Sam? I could still hear you previously.
So the week of actions culminated in 5 activists climbing onto the roof of City Hall and refusing to come down until the council were prepared to be transparent about their targets and their progress. We called upon them to improve on Clean Air Compliance Date of 2025 and asked them 3 questions, which were: what are your plans, what have you achieved, and what support do you need? After a week up on the roof, Mayor Rees responded publicly on the issue in his fortnightly Facebook question and answer session. And the result of the public pressure being put on the council was that the mayor committed to delivering clean air by the end of 2022, bringing the date forward by nearly 3 years from the previously outlined compliance date. This is an amazing result, and other organisations have been campaigning and applying pressure on this for years. And again, building on that, XR's focus and actions on clean air helped to give some clarity and movement in just 1 week. So this shows that public engagement is essential and that activism works. So XR are now in the early stages of forming a movement of movements to help deliver clean air for Bristol. It's a campaign called Our City. We're mindful of the fact that some of XR's tactics and methods may alienate certain groups or make people feel uncomfortable, and for this reason we're reaching out to community groups, charities and organisations for whom air quality is a concern. The aim is to pool our resources and collectively design a clean air campaign, one that all parties will have a hand in shaping, one that everyone can engage with, and one that will mobilise people to bring about change. The campaign will not be designed, the campaign will be designed by all organisations, of which XR will be one, but it is not an XR solely campaign. We understand that when working with new organisations, progress moves at the pace of trust. And we have set up an outreach group made up of XR activists who have existing connections with community groups and organisations who might want to be involved in the campaign. Using personal connections as a starting point, we hope will give us a better way to build trust and keep people engaged. If you are an organisation or know of one that would like to be involved in the Our City campaign, then please get in touch by emailing the address that's up on screen. This Saturday we're running the first meeting where all interested parties can get together and discuss the campaign. The meeting will run from 10 AM till 12:30 PM on the 18th of July. If you want to be involved, then please do get in touch. And we hope this will be the start of something that all groups can own and that will deliver a collective vision of clean air for Bristol. And lastly, yeah, if you want to be involved, then in XR, then there's some links up here. You know, people can follow those. And yeah, all that remains for me to say is thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you. Really interesting to hear these differing perspectives, which is the point of this webinar. So we're trying to present a range of different methods here of engaging with diverse citizens, and then also, importantly, getting the ear of policymakers to actually open that dialogue with them as we start moving that through. So we're going to move on to our next speaker now, Zoe Banks-Gross from the Knoll West Media Centre. Before Zoe comes in, it's just a quick reminder that link is there, so we'd be keen to know kind of how you are bringing about change within your organisations, what type of organiser you are. And we also urge you to keep asking questions as they occur to you in our chats, because that will help us later when we're asking questions to all our organisations as well. But now to hear from Zoe about community activism. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Yes, I'm going to speak about community activism and air quality, citizens as architects of change. I'm going to quickly speak just a bit about me. I think that it's great that ClairCity has some campaigning materials and how to start a campaign, because I don't think that people just sort of drop out of the sky sort of fully formed and ready to campaign on issues. And if you've got all the facts and the information as well as some tools to start, it's really helpful. So about me, I worked as an environmental scientist for 15 years before starting a family. And then I took some time off and I got involved in my local community in Easton in Bristol. And I worked initially in about 2013, I started working with the Easton Energy Group, community energy group, and we were encouraging residents to retrofit, use renewable energy, and support low carbon schemes. We carried out engagement events in car parking spaces, back gardens. For a while, we were stewarding an energy efficient show home, which you can see was very brightly coloured and brought lots of people in. Smoothie bikes and other activities also help people get physically connected to the process of creating energy. All of this kind of engagement and activity led to me becoming a bit of a poster for Bristol as a low carbon city after our year as green capital. Tying together these strands of environmental justice, social justice and health, these are sort of defining strands of the work that I do today. I also got involved with Playing Out. In 2014, I started to coordinate regular sessions on my street in Lawrence Hill, which we've already heard about how really terrible our air quality is. I was completely unaware of the air quality though, and in March of 2017 I was contacted by a BBC producer asking if I would be willing to put an air quality sensor in my front garden for a week to look at the comparison of air quality when the road was closed for a Playing Out session and normal use. And I live on a fairly quiet residential street, but it is in inner city Bristol. I didn't expect there to be that much of a difference, though, in the air quality during the 2 hours that our road was closed to through traffic and the rest of the time. When the data came back from the University of Bath, I was really surprised. The nitrogen dioxide levels were on average 5 times higher than when the street was open. They were above the level of 40 micrograms and well below during a street closure for Playing Out. So when the streets are closed, it doesn't mean that no one can drive through. In fact, residents are allowed to drive in and out whilst being guided by a steward on the street. So this really highlights the fact that decreasing our use of cars dramatically, but not necessarily banning them completely, can make a massive difference in air quality. In any case, after finding out this information, and realizing what the health implications were for my family and others in the area, it made me a lot more passionate about closing the street for Playing Out, as well as looking at how I could get involved in improving the air quality for my local area. So around this time, I started to work for Norwest Media Centre as a freelance community officer. And I'm just going to go through a whistle-stop tour of the Bristol Approach, which is a co-design method for engaging with people on issues important to them. As part of Replicate, which is a Horizon 2020 EU-funded project, we've been working with citizens, communities, and Bristol City Council to carry out engagement activities. And we also teamed up with ClairCity for several events, as you'll see in the Bristol Approach in action. This is Easton Community Centre. I think it was the Arts Trail in June of 2017. And here are a few of the ClairCity air quality experts on a map of Bristol with the air quality on the floor. We also had activities that people could get engaged in and physically talking about air quality, what they knew, what they wanted to know. Really just getting to the, I guess, identification of the issue of air quality and framing it in this pop-up workshop. We also worked with an artist who's very interactive, and we follow this activity with workshops with cyclists, taxi drivers, and at a local primary school. So the steps 3 and 4 of the Bristol Approach, design and deploy, are shown with this ladybird sensor. Participants were really keen to have a sensor which could monitor their nitrogen dioxide travel, like on their journeys, help them make decisions which way they would go. So you were able to use the sensor on a bicycle or a rucksack, or put it on the inside of a windscreen of a car. There were a lot of challenges with this. It was designed with the community, but the computer science department at UWE actually developed the software and the hardware. In any case, while we were trying to sort out some of the challenges with the software and hardware, we started to use stationary sensors. They've already been mentioned. They're Luftdaten sensors. These sensors are part of an open source worldwide project, and it was great to use them because we could build them with people and share the software with them where they could access the data all the time. We actually had a group of citizens come to us from inner city Bristol, and they were living in social housing, and they were really concerned about the dust that was building up from a construction site locally. But it's great to sort of show them the technology, demystify it, and then also have them participate in sharing that data sort of locally as well as on a national and international platform. This is our orchestration step. And you can see we were working also with the Bristol Clean Air Alliance around this time, and we did this event at Felix Road Adventure Playground with Friends of the Earth. So it was really good fun to have them at the event with us and sharing some of the tools that we were using in Felix Road Adventure Playground. This is also in Lawrence Hill in Bristol. And the other picture here is of our Commons Sense interactive exhibit at Norwest Media Centre, where we had loads of sensors where people could actually try out whether it's air quality, noise, other things, again, to get people understanding using tools for sensing and being able to understand technology. Data is a really difficult concept for many people. So as part of the Bristol Approach, we hold sessions on making sense of the data, as well as working with artists who can convey complicated information in new and exciting ways. So we worked with artists throughout the whole process of citizen sensing on this project. And I think this workshop we held at Easton Community Centre, also it's in Easton Ward, but quite close to Lawrence Hill. So a lot of people who participate come from both wards in the area. Another making workshop as part of the outcomes. This was held at Norwest Media Centre, the factory, and we had white van drivers come, and we did a rapid prototyping process. So we had some inspiration and ideation, and within a half-day workshop, they went from making sort of a cardboard prototype of this travel gauge to sort of look at whether or not the route of travel that they've chosen has a high impact or low impact on air quality. But these are all things that they designed, really thinking about their travel. So I think it's really important to get people involved in the process, and they're going to understand and also want to change their behavior and be actually really involved in that, as opposed to just being told what to do. Another example of outcomes is these data postcards, putting the data into your hands. They were shared at a school fair event last summer at Bannerman Road School, which is also in Lawrence Hill. We had a high accuracy Zephyr sensor installed at the school, and it collected nitrogen dioxide, ozone, and particulate matter levels. So the digital artist took data from these sensors, wrote code to associate a color intensity alongside the intensity of the concentration of nitrogen dioxide, ozone, or PM. And as the data was collected throughout the day, the changes could be seen on each postcard as each strip is connected to a 15-minute period of time during the 24-hour clock. So we had 28 different postcards from days between April and May. And you can't quite see this small picture, but the idea was really that people could look at that and look at different days. I think one of the days was Easter. There was another day where the weather was really poor, and really getting people thinking about, oh, was there a lot of traffic then, or barbecues or other things happening that could that could explain some of the variation in the colors. Again, it's a bit of a provocation because you can't always see air quality, but if you could, who would you send this data to on a postcard? And I guess my questions can be answered at the end of the session. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Zoe. Yeah, that's fascinating. And yeah, really exciting to see all those different methods of working with people as well. So moving on then to Samuel Williams, who's a teacher and a member of Bristol Schools Climate Alliance.
Hi, I just wanted to, wanted to start off just looking at some key processes, because we as climate campaigners, we need to get better at engaging diverse communities. So listening and learning is really important. And to look at some values as well, and particularly to think about equity, and to think that we might need to put more time, more effort, more resources into engaging diverse communities to give everyone an equal opportunity to make their voices heard. So just to reiterate really from the introduction to the webinar, that disadvantaged and BAME communities are disproportionately affected by climate change and air quality, and that they are social justice issues. And that, I hope that what we've been doing will also give you some useful insights that are transferable into those questions. See what I can do to help answer them. So I think it's really important to have a context and to frame an understanding of where you're working. And in Bristol, it is a divided city. There's ethnic inequalities in Bristol, and ethnic minorities face greater disadvantage in education and employment. So not only are they facing greater disadvantage in education, employment, and climate change and air quality. So we need to understand this context when we're thinking about how we can engage diverse communities. So I'm a member of the Bristol Schools Climate Alliance, and our aims are to embed education into the Bristol One City Climate Strategy. And the Bristol One City Climate Strategy is a plan to make Bristol carbon neutral and climate resistant by 2030. But currently education isn't in it, so we're aiming to embed education into the Bristol One City Climate Strategy. And we're working with Teach the Future, who campaign nationally but have adapted their asks for mayors and other local authority leaders as well. I just put at the bottom there as well, that thinking about the lessons that we need to learn from the Black Lives Matter movement, that we may be important for us to adapt these asks as well, taking into account institutional and systemic racism and inequality. I think we need to be explicit and have that conversation about race and thinking about that value of equity, and sort of not leaving that on the side. Bristol Schools Climate Alliance is quite a new, a very new organisation, started just before lockdown. So the lessons that I'm going to be talking about are how we've tried to embed climate change education into the school that I work at. So I'm a teacher at Cotton Gardens Primary School, and I lead something called the Cooperative Forum. And it's my job to make sure that every stakeholder is able to have their voice heard on strategic issues. And in a school community, we're very privileged to be able to engage and work with all families in our local area. So we're immediately, have that connection with a diverse range of families. We've also got really good experience of slowing down and making sure that our processes are inclusive and enable change from the bottom up. So we changed our name in September 2018 from Colston's Primary School to Cotton Gardens Primary School, and that really came from the community, and then governors, as that came up from the community, governors took charge in a really full, open, honest, and cross-community consultation. And when you're listening to a wide variety of views, and you think about that value of equity to make sure that you get all of those views and opinions, you can make your processes better, you can achieve something brilliant, and you can bring everyone with you at the same time. And so because of that experience, we're used to listening to our school community and acting and learning. And so when children started to go on the youth strikes for climate in Bristol in February 2019, where they some children left school to go down to the city centre to protest. And parents and carers and staff and the local community, there was a general feeling that we all needed to do a little bit more, or to do a lot more really around climate change. And that's when we started to think about embedding climate change education into our curriculum. And we decided to do a curriculum strike, where we went off the national curriculum during those Youth Strike for Climate days and teach a climate change curriculum and also focus on resilience and well-being. One of the things that we really liked about this idea is that it's immediately inclusive. It's not just about those children who and parents and carers that are willing and wanting to come out of school to go to a protest. It's actually, you're engaging all children and all families when we do something like this in school. And we're taking the knowledge and experience of teachers to do it in a holistic way. And also when we're doing it in a holistic way, we're thinking about the interconnected nature of these issues involved and thinking about social justice, rather than just hearing these messages from the media or brothers and sisters. We're able to do it in a holistic way. So on the 29th of November, we knew that we couldn't just do something like this based on things that we'd heard. We launched a full consultation where we consulted all stakeholders on our approach and what they thought of our approach and whether we should continue with it or not. And again, slowing down and doing that has really helped us refine our approach as well and improve it. So what works for engaging diverse communities? It takes time. It takes a lot of time and effort. It's not something. There's no quick fixes. We've been things like running coffee mornings regularly for years, having an international week every year where families come in and share food and culture and singing, and then also making sure that things like the Learners Forum, where we engage the learners in strategic decision making and consultation, is representative of the school community. It can be harder to make sure that parents and carers and leadership groups sometimes are representative, but when we do have control, we can make sure that we do that. And just going back to policymakers a little bit, I'll just go back. Marvin Rees, the Mayor of Bristol, came into school in the beginning of March to find out about our curriculum strikes, and he was really impressed with the holistic way that we were teaching and thinking about all of the issues. He said that some of the comments from our climate change activists were the most mature and insightful thoughts he'd ever heard, because it's that understanding of the fact that housing and education and employment and all of these, they're all part of this bigger issue, and they're interconnected with climate change, and that you can't you can't make change with climate change campaigning unless you're addressing these other issues either first or at the same time, and again bringing everyone with you. Okay. I just put the translation up there as well. That I think I might have mentioned that, but that is a way, and that's again, we're still learning and we're listening, and we need to improve our processes, and we're well aware of that as well. So I just want to talk about a little story now on that consultation day where we consulted all of the children, because I think it's a good analogy in a way of bringing different opinions and groups together. I was in a class and there was a group of really committed climate activists who've been going to the youth strikes and who are really engaged. And then there was another group of children, with some children from ethnic minority backgrounds who actually didn't want to engage. And I think felt a little bit patronised by some of the things that the other children were saying. So we worked really, really hard to bring these children together and to make sure that they listened to each other and could use empathy to understand where they were coming from, and to respect each other's views, even if they disagreed with each other. So, for example, we've been talking about air pollution in regards to our active travel initiative, encouraging people to walk or scoot, or not drive right up to the school to improve air quality. And one of the children was really angry and quite emotional because he felt that this campaigning would mean that his mum couldn't have a car, and that then she couldn't drive to work, and she would lose her job, and they would lose their house. So it was a big kind of exercise in listening for all of us and understanding the lived experiences of all of the different people in our community and what's important to them. So 6 of the climate activists were also involved in a national competition in Birmingham in the NEC. So I decided to invite 6 other children along with me who had different views as a way of, again, of bringing them together and having empathy and understanding with each other. And they came. Unfortunately, the trip was cancelled due to COVID-19. But I also brought them along when Marvin Rees came into school to hear the presentation. And I think when you're trying to engage policymakers, if they've got to think of the whole city, the whole community, and I think if you can come with an understanding that these issues are interconnected, you can make it hard for them to dismiss it as single issue, because you're bringing them all together, and you're representing as many people as you can and the whole picture. So where next for us? Well, we're still in our consultation phase for making a long-term decision about our curriculum strikes, and we're going to have another consultation about a more systematic, structural and long-term approach the school could take moving forward when responding to the Black Lives Matter movement. We know we've taken good steps forward with our name change and curriculum content, but we need to do more. Asher Craig, the Deputy Mayor, is going to be involved in this. And we're thinking there's something called the One Bristol curriculum, which is in development, which is in response to the Runnymede report about having a more diverse curriculum. We're going to be thinking about, could the One Bristol curriculum and a climate change curriculum, could we bring those together? Could we embed them together? Could they form a golden sort of thread that runs through everything? And I've got a couple of slides next, which I haven't got time to go through, but I just thought I'd leave them on there for you to look at the end. And they are from Esther Deans, chair of the Race Equality Education Group. And I just think that the way she talks about the One Bristol curriculum is really relevant to climate change campaigners. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam, as well. If you could mute yourself, Sam, there. There we go, a few. So thank you so much, Sam. That was fantastic. And you can see in the comments there that we've had lots of reflections from people on both Zoe's presentation and Sam's. We still have 2 more presentations, which really start to allow us to reflect on what people have been saying. Now we've heard how lots of people have tried to approach the council, we're actually going to hear from a Bristol City Council representative now, Mark Leach, a project officer, who actually is involved in involving citizens in some of this work. So thank you, Mark.
Hi, thank you, Laura, and thank you everyone else. It's going to be some tough acts to follow. So, this quote from those of you outside Bristol might not know this chap, Ben Barker. He's an absolute legend, dynamo of action in the city. And he came up with this quote that says, "There's no such thing as the council. There's just a collection of independent fiefdoms that share a common heating system," which entertained me greatly. And I'm not going to comment on necessarily that reflection, but I think it is worth remembering that councils are very large organisations that do a massive range of things. Our team, our service of just fewer than 10 people, deals with air quality, water quality, climate change, adaptation, food, and elements of planning. And these are some of the issues. I'll skip over this slide because I'm going to have to chop bits, I think, to try and get us back some time. But these are some of the issues that people campaign on and run projects on and approach us for help on. And I was going to set out something of a kit format. So the things you will need if you want to get results out of the council, out of officers and politicians. And I'll talk more about that later, the difference between the two. So data is very important. You have to remember that people in organisations like the council often are data heads. They respond well to data. They work with data. We love data, basically. So if you want to convince us of something, often comms at the moment. We've heard people talk from XR and others. stories and anecdotes and winning hearts over minds are the thing. But with officers, I think data is king. We provide a lot of data, and I think other councils across Europe will too. They'll often have an open data page in a website with all sorts of data sets that you can use in your campaign. Policy is important too. We often get our own policies quoted back at us, and that can be a mixed blessing. I think one of the most, I'm going to go through these very quickly, but maybe if there's particular areas of interest, we do it questions. Precedent is really powerful. I was trying to get variable road signs used for air quality awareness raising of a consultation, and I couldn't get them. I just couldn't get anywhere because these are important safety things, until I found out Leeds City Council had done it. As soon as I found another council had done it, and to be fair, the officer in question said, if you can find another council that's done it, that's fine. So I did, and we got the road signs. It's brilliant. Precedent is really, really important. And we've heard about this from other speakers, I think, demonstrating support. So going out and talking to your community stakeholders and demonstrating representativeness. And it's fantastic to see everyone, I think all the speakers mention being representative and reaching out to BME and other groups. A map is something you would need in any sort of quest. Well, here you need to understand the lie of the land, the difference between politicians and so the elected politicians and councillors, whatever they're called in your municipality, and officers, people who are like me, apply for a job and get a job. Who are the relevant politicians? Who's on the cabinet? Who's at the top of the organisation? Who's got responsibility for air quality or climate change or whatever it might be? And what are the other governmental actors and non-governmental actors? So there's some of the environmental responsibilities lie outside the local authority, the municipality. Finding ways in, so we provide, and other councils will be the same, a whole load of web pages on consultations and events and different ways in to influence and affect policy. Sometimes it's just a conversation. Allies is probably one of the most important things. Who else is working on similar stuff? Who's already approached the council on this? And then lastly, you need intelligence. I've added empathy there. I think it's part of the same thing. Excuse me, clicked on the wrong slide. Okay, this is from Sun Tzu, who was 500 BC and wrote The Art of War. Well, this isn't about war. It shouldn't feel like a conflict, but there is something about understanding your enemy or your hopefully not your enemy, but the person you're working for. So it sometimes feels like this. It sometimes feels like you're in conflict, but we need to change that, of course, and we need to build a cooperative relationship. And the most powerful thing you can do is to put yourselves in the shoes of, say, a council officer. So I think this might have to be my last slide, sadly. So basically, I'll rattle through this. Basically, remember that some officers have the same goals as you. They want the same things as you. Remember that not all communities agree. Lots of people maybe in this group would like to ban cars from the city tomorrow, but actually most people outside our green bubble don't want that. And another speaker mentioned that, the boy with the mum, so we have to take people with us. And in the council, you're often balancing these opposing views. Remember that a lot of officers will have had scars. You're a well-organised, well-meaning, organised, honest, etc. campaigner, but the last person who maybe looked a bit like you wasn't, and maybe let them down, and they're still suffering from that experience. And then this widespread condition, terrible affliction called thin-enditis, which is the fear that if the officer in question opens does something for you, will they have to do it for like suddenly hundreds of people and dozens of campaigns? So you need to reassure them on that, or at least be aware of that. Just being aware that democracy is slow. It has to be slow to do things properly. So understanding that different pace. I've worked in small charities and small businesses and even large businesses. Stuff doesn't take as long because you don't have the democratic process. So again, just understanding it won't change it, but it helps you deal with it. I'm going to skip some of these, I think, to talk about motivations. I'll finish off on motivations. So just remembering that, so I was involved, a community group wanted to get solar panels on a community centre, and they were having an absolute block from the council, and the finance and legal officers were just saying no. So I came in and I just found out that actually what was motivating these finance and legal officers They didn't get out of bed every morning to block things. They got out of bed because they looked after an asset for the whole of the city, and they wanted that asset to stay forever. And if you put solar panels on and you get things wrong, you'll have a leaky roof or you'll have problems. Then what gets them out of bed is to protect this asset. And as soon as you understand that, we got through, and in the end, to cut a long story short, there are now solar panels on top of that community centre. And this last quote was from a project, I can't remember where I was working now, and a woman said, if I speak to an unhelpful council officer, which I may do from time to time, then keep trying, because sooner or later you'll speak to a helpful one. And once you've got a good contact, you're well on your way through the thing. Very quickly, a massive list. If these slides are shared later, you'll be able to see all the things we do, which is a bewildering array. And yeah, I'll skip these slides. But I was going to talk about not consulting, which is a bit controversial, but we don't have time for that. So that's me done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for being to time there as well. So really interesting reflections about how councils work as well, which I'm sure will be of huge interest to people here. So we will send around a document with these slides, with this information, so that people can reflect on that and learn more as well. So finally, with our speakers, we now have Professor Jim Longhurst, who works with Bristol's Green Capital Partnership and also at UWE Bristol and the Climate Change Committee. So Jim is going to talk about the Green Capital Partnership and maybe offer some reflections from everything we've heard as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, everyone. Delighted to have this opportunity to talk about the Green Capital Partnership in Bristol as a case study that embodies many of the things that this webinar has been concerned with. So a little bit of background about the partnership, about what it has done over its lifetime. It's not a new organisation. It goes back to 2007. It is the Environmental Sustainability Network in the city of Bristol. It was in existence well before Europe came up with the idea of a Green Capital Award, and Bristol, of course, was the UK's only city that had a Green Capital Award. But the partnership brings over 950 different organisations, not individual people, but organisations from across the private, the public, and the third sectors in the city. And they all have a shared vision. That's how you sign up for the partnership. And the vision is to have a sustainable Bristol with a high quality of life for all. And that for all is really important. And it is about promoting sustainability in the city and its wider region, to provide a voice and to enable collaboration and collective action. And here are just 3 words that really sum up exactly what the partnership tries to do. It's about enabling the organisations to work together, to share, to learn, to take collaborative action. It's about amplifying the voice of those organisations so that the collective is more powerful than the individual, and then to influence, to use the power of that collective set of voices to engage with policymakers, to bring forward ideas, to challenge ideas, and to ensure that the actions that are being taken forward, whether they're very local or even at a larger scale, that those are about supporting that shared vision. There is a small team, and I'm delighted to say that some of them are on this webinar, and Lizzie may come in later as the Chief Operating Officer. There are a number of organisations that provide financial support and are members of a board to guide the Community Interest Company. The universities, a range of other organisations, all part of the body that brings the partnership to life. And there are also elected members on the board that bring the voice of the partnership members into the decision making of the organisation. I won't go into the detail of these slides, but over the years, the partnership has had some very significant successes around collaborative action on energy, on food, nature, resources, transport. It's worked strongly with the city agencies and organisations to help the One City plan come to now 2 iterations, with planning for a 3rd version as well. Work to bring the Sustainable Development Goals to life It's not an individual set of people doing this. This is the partnership and its members that are working to deliver this. It's had a funding stream to support community projects. It has reached out across the city space to ensure that those marginal communities and disadvantaged communities have a voice. And I particularly flag up the Green and Black Ambassadors scheme that was an initial project with Ujima Radio and the University of Bristol particularly involved. Now as the Black and Green Ambassadors project, funded through a National Lottery Award that will develop a cohort a year over the next 3 years, a really important opportunity to ensure that the green activity has a diverse array of voices present. And recognising the connection with health, the Healthy City Week has been a critical element in the past, and we hope to bring that back into the makeup of the engagement of the partnership with the city. And there have been some very important collaborative and engagement tools, the monthly Green Mingle, the thematic gatherings around particular topics, and the Members Sparks Forum, where new ideas are shared amongst organisations and new collaborations and new ideas spring to life. Probably worth noting that of the membership of the partnership, around about 40% comes from the third sector. So it is deeply rooted in the community and other networks across the city space. And as you see, there's a variety of communication tools to enable those activities that we all hold dear to be shared, to be amplified, and for influence. Someone's just asked what third sector is. That's the charitable bodies, the community groups, and others that aren't formally constituted in the public or the private sector. And some of the amplification routes, I won't go through the detail of these, but there are lots of routes through which messages can be shared and amplified. And one of the most important things that the partnership can do and does do is to bring that collective voice into a whole array of different circumstances and different opportunities. The partnership has produced a vision. You can download that. When you get the slides, you'll see where to do that. Some very, very large scale ambitions for the future of the city of Bristol. They are not visions that are unachievable. If we want them, those can be created, but have to be created through a democratically agreed way, but also to ensure that those ambitions do find expression and meaning for all the different parts of the city of Bristol. There are some priorities around carbon, around environmental equality, about food and the Going for Gold initiative, and about resource efficiency, particularly creating the notion of a circular Bristol. All of these are really important and intersect with the ideas that this webinar is about in connection with climate and air quality. All those things connect to that. But really critical here is the importance of this being inclusive and open and enabling for all. And one of the things the partnership is striving to do is to make sure that diversity and inclusion is actually at the heart of the actions the partnership is taking. There are a range of activities that are going to go on over the future years. They're all about trying to make sure that these ideas of climate and air quality improvement and related activities are all part of the story that we all collectively create in Bristol, and to be a voice for that positive environmental sustainability. The history of the Green Capital Partnership, you can read at your leisure when you get your slides. It's not just a flash in the pan activity, it's a sustaining entity that has been a powerful voice within the city space, and one that needs its members to share their voices, to be articulate for the change that we all are seeking, a change that is for a sustainable Bristol with a high quality of life for all. So with that, I will say thank you, and you can follow up at those particular links there. But Laura, a minute or two just to say a few words about what we've heard. We've heard some very inspiring contributions in this webinar about the importance of working together, the importance of the mechanisms that we use to work, the tools that work in different contexts. One thing I would say is there probably isn't a magic wand that is one size fits all. It is the context in which one is operating that will be critical. And from that context, it's about picking the tools, the allies, the intelligence, the data that are right for that context. But if I come back to something I said right at the beginning of the Green Capital Partnership, there are those three words about engaging with the voices who are with you, but trying to understand and engage with those who may take a different view, who may think of themselves as creating a barrier, but trying to engage with those organizations, and then amplifying with those allies that you've created, amplifying messages, diverting messages to different places, but channeling them to the right places. Mark gave some very important observations about how a council works and the way in which one needs to structure your engagement to bring real influence to bear. And that third element of influencing, there are many ways in which influence can be brought to bear. But when it's amplified by a variety of different stakeholders, that influence can be really critical and powerful as a force for change. I shall say thank you there.
Thank you, Jim. No, that's fantastic. And I think that's one of the things I've noted from this webinar as well. So all these different voices, groups across the city, it sounds like there's a lot of connections we can make for Bristol. And of course, the ClairCity project also extends right across Europe. So there's European campaigners working on these issues right across Europe that we can connect to as well and learn from in many of our cities as well. So you will have seen our chat box with the questions in there. We'll send out the presentations and the question and answers. We will finish at 2:45, so 7 minutes. So we just have some brief questions for those who can stay. One of the ones that I noted is something that Jim riffed on, this idea of diversity and also social cohesion. So one of the questions that came up for Zoe and Sam Williams, if you're there, was to think about how, in terms of the actions that you're doing, thinking about air pollution, by bringing together a variety of different voices, it also helps with social cohesion as well. If you wanted to reflect on that, you can do now.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think it is really important to bring together everyone. It's not easy by any means, but making sure that you have everybody in the community part of the conversation, and you'll need to engage with different people in different ways. Some people will be engageable using online social media. Some people you actually need to speak to face to face. So I don't have any kind of quick wins or easy answers, but just saying that, getting people together and as early as possible in the process is really important.
And Sam?
Yeah, and I think it's also really important to think about, as I was saying before, everyone's lived experiences. So when we were doing a push to improve the air quality around the school, one of the things that we were really clear about was there should be no shame for people who drive to school and park next to school. It's not about shame, it's about understanding, and it's about doing what we can, but getting that for some people, that's what they're going to need to do, and we need to take away that element of shame. And I think that is a more inclusive approach, and talking about that openly as a do what we can, and those of us who can should do what we can, but we need to understand and not discriminate against people or have any kind of ideas of shame towards people that do just need to drive and park right outside school, and some people will need to do that more than others.
Fantastic. And so a lot of the resources that have been talked about we can link to as well. Sam Morris, if you're still there, one of the questions that was raised is the idea that whilst we can bring people together, reflect the community, sometimes we need to push that conversation on a little bit more than it already is, which is what XR is doing. So could you reflect on both pushing the conversation further and how not to, or how maybe sometimes it's an inevitable about alienating some of the members of the community?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me okay, I hope? Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned in my presentation, some of XR's tactics and actions are alienating. There's a lot of work going on in the background to try and kind of develop actions and strategies that are as inclusive as possible. But we're very mindful that in order to kind of drive this thing forwards and try and get some positive change in what is a very, very urgent situation, sometimes you just have to kind of go all out and understand that while that might kind of alienate some people, hopefully it will further the discussion and put more pressure on decision makers. So it is a very fine line. It's a very fine line to tread. I mean, I think that's really with the RAR City campaign. We really want that to be something that's that really is inclusive. It's not an XR run campaign. We want that to be a movement of movements campaign where every voice is welcome, every voice is heard, and we really want as many people from as diverse a sweep of the population as possible to come and get involved in that. Because we really understand that, without everyone on board and trying to kind of understand the different viewpoints, people will fall through the cracks. So it is very difficult. And I guess, with XR, we push in a particular way, but hopefully what we are is sort of the sharp end of the wedge that then enable experts and community groups to come in behind and kind of fill in with that detail. And I hope that we're certainly trying to find as many ways as possible to make, although it is the sharp end of the wedge, to make it as inclusive as possible so people don't feel pushed out of the way by it.
Thank you, excellent. So that movement of movements, we've heard about a few across this webinar. So RAR City, Bristol Green Capital Partnership, Bristol Schools Climate Alliance, and also the Bristol Clean Air Alliance, which is what Alan has been working towards as well. So I think I'm going to wrap up here. There's a comment in the chat there that we need to be finding that common ground between people so that change is in their interests as much as ours and other people's with health issues as well. So don't drag the donkey, apparently, walk beside it. Something for us to end and think about there as we go forward. We will be sending all those slides, question and answers, links out, alliances, movements to reflect on, and we hope that this has been useful for you to develop more resources and to think about air pollution, carbon emissions, and making the change. Thank you.